Huh? How long will you be up for? Like, it doesn't matter really, just... That's fine, the dog will be fine when he comes by, we'll just run up the seas, it should be fine. Like, yeah, whatever. I mean, no, about 45 to 50 minutes. Right. All right, everybody, how's it going? Thanks for watching today. I'm Jonathan Steele, a developer advocate at GraphCMS, and today we're going to be looking at some new tooling that we've been working on that will help empower content creators who are working with GraphCMS and Gatsby on that stack. So yeah, a lot of people are using Gatsby in the Jamstack space, a lot of people are using headless CMSs, and GraphCMS is one of those. And one of the problems that we often hear from users or customers with GraphCMS is how can they preview their content, changes that make in the CMS, how can they get a live preview of that? So we've been working on some new tooling to make that possible with Gatsby. We're just going to quickly kind of delve into the history of Gatsby and GraphCMS, how it works currently and how it will work in the future when this new tooling is available. So if we just, so we'll cover the history and how it works now, what it's going to look like, why we had to make some changes, and then we'll actually kind of do a quick demo of a GraphCMS powered Gatsby site with Gatsby Preview, live previews powered by Gatsby Cloud. So yeah, let's dive right in. I need to figure out those scene transitions don't actually have the hotkeys set up. Yeah, I need to figure that out. Anyway, so the current approach to working with GraphCMS and Gatsby is using Gatsby's GraphQL source plugin. This will so this is a good way of sourcing content, fetching content from native GraphQL APIs. Now, its one downfall is that it doesn't build native Gatsby nodes. It doesn't source native Gatsby nodes when querying. It's simply schema stitching the internal Gatsby schema with the external schema from GraphCMS. So because we're not getting those native Gatsby nodes that we need, we're missing out on things like using transformers, which in turn powers Gatsby image. And as well, we're not currently able to support the functions of Gatsby Cloud by using this plugin. So this is why these are the problems that we're faced with right now. So if we just kind of dive over to Gatsby Cloud, and I'm just going to sign out here quickly. All right, yeah, so Gatsby Cloud, it's their kind of new product offering as of last year, and it's basically some tools and a SaaS service that you can utilize to get the best from your Gatsby site. So they offer real-time preview, so for content collaboration, content creators, that's really nice. And they've also got this new incremental builds feature. So today we're going to focus mostly on the real-time preview stuff. That's what I'm going to demonstrate later. We're going to kind of talk about the advantages of this and what this brings to the headless CMS space. So one of the pain points of working with headless CMS, particularly for content creators, is actually how we get a preview of the content you're working on, whether that be a blog post, a new marketing page on a website. It's really difficult for content creators to get an up-to-date view of the content they're working on without having to kind of pull down the repository locally, build all that locally, get API keys, all that nightmare. We want to be able to make that easier for content creators to kind of figure out what the blog post looks like really easily and in the browser. And what's important there is that that preview is in context of the application. So if you're writing a blog post, you want it to actually be laid out in the design of your actual website rather than just a generic design or a blank slate. So that's important to remember. So we obviously want to be able to offer real-time previews for for GraphCMS users. So at the moment that's not possible, but we're working on stuff to make that possible. So how does that change, and what is changing for that to happen? We need to build a native source plugin, and what I mean by that is actually a GraphCMS focused source plugin. Now, we did have one. We do have one, I should say. It is deprecated, and it was built on a previous version of the product, but it does still function with those older versions. However, we kind of moved away from using that when this source plugin was released, and that was because there's challenges around building a source plugin for a GraphQL API, let alone a CMS based GraphQL API. Every schema in GraphCMS is unique. No one project is the same. So building schemas, building a Gatsby schema for each project like that proves it has its challenges. So we've been actually working and talking with the Gatsby team, and they are working on some new tooling. You can see here the pull request is open on the Gatsby repository. It's still a work in progress, but what they have right now is functioning. I've been using it. I've built the newer version of our source plugin with this toolkit, and it's really, really powerful. So yeah, basically the premise of this toolkit is to make this is to introduce APIs and features to actually simplify how we fetch data from a GraphQL API. Because what you'll find is normally with source plugins, they're actually querying REST APIs 9 times out of 10. So they'll be querying REST data, JSON data from a REST API, and then they'll be building the Gatsby GraphQL nodes inside of their source plugin. What this toolkit actually gives us is a foundation of tools to actually build a Gatsby schema from our GraphQL schema. So yeah, I mean, I've been using this. As I said, it's a work in progress, but it's actually really nice to work with, and we've actually got something kind of functioning already to show, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, let's kind of dive in and have a look. I'm going to try and use a keyboard shortcut here. I'm not sure if it's worked, so I'm going to have to check anyway. Yes, it did work. Oh dear, having some issues. Let me just figure these out. This is a bit of a... I think because I added this display... No, I need to add a display. Right. Oh wow, that's this is not going very well. Yes, I added the original source for the display before I updated my resolution. So now we're good. Alright, so back on track now. That's short sidetrack. Please ignore that if you're watching this in the future. Yeah, so what we have here is we're just in VS Code. We're just going to go ahead and add our dependencies to build a Gatsby site. So all we actually need is Gatsby React DOM in our dependencies. So we can go ahead and let those install. Whilst that's doing that, I'm just going to create the index page here. Not sure what that error is. I'm just going to ignore that. You need to import React still. This is not Next.js where they kind of give you that functionality. So let's just get this building. I'm just gonna add some scripts here real quick. I could have used a starter and I would have gotten this out of the box. That was a bit foolish of me. So now if we do yarn dev, you should get a nice hello world Gatsby site. And that's one of the beauties of Gatsby. It's really easy to get up and running with a site with a couple of dependencies and one React component or a page in this case. So yeah, I'm just gonna add that there, make sure we don't commit any of this stuff. Alright, nice. So if we dive back here, we should now have our hello world. Awesome. One thing that's handy with Gatsby is they have the GraphQL root here, which actually gives you a graphical playground explorer, so you can see your schema of your site. Obviously we haven't added any source plugins yet, so we don't have any of the goodness. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Right, so that's running in the background. And I'm just going to do, yeah, we're going to do yarn add, and I typed this in before because the new version of the package isn't published, it's still on a separate branch. We're having to use this git package tool to actually install it. Just going to add that there. And what we need is we need a Gatsby config. So in a Gatsby config file, and this is where, if you've not used Gatsby before, this is where we kind of configure all of our source plugins, add any plugins at all that we need to add, we will do in here. So we're going to add a plugins key, and in here we're going to do resolve Gatsby source GraphCMS, and then some options here. So this is where the we actually need to go and get some the endpoint for our GraphCMS project, the API endpoint. We also need an API key so we can actually query that data. So I've already set that up. So I'm just going to dive into GraphCMS here. This is a basic project I've been working with. Well, this is a subset of a project I've been working with just for demonstration purposes. Pretty basic schema. We've just got a product model with a few fields, images, because we can now use Gatsby image with GraphCMS. Hooray! So yeah, I'm keen to show that off. Field description, that kind of stuff. Nothing that exciting at all, really. But yeah, we're going to dive into our project settings. I'm really self-conscious that I'm not live because I've turned off all notifications, so I have no idea if I'm getting pinged or not. So anyway, yeah, so we're in the project settings here. Here's our API. We can just click to copy that. Let's go back here. We use .env because it's good practice. We don't need that. GraphCMS endpoint. So with Gatsby, you get .env out of the box. You don't need to install it as a dependency. You get it out of the box, and that what that does is just inside of here we can just do require .env config like that. And that will give us access to these environment variables when we're building our project, which is important to disguise your token, especially your token. The endpoint might matter if it's a public API, but you probably want to hide your token. So it's always best to use environment variables when working with JavaScript like this. Okay, so in here we have three options. Two of them are required, so we're going to add the endpoint, and we're going to use our environment variable that we just added. It's very hard to type I haven't added this yet, but we'll get this in a second, but I'm just going to kind of key it in while I'm here. Wrong way, Jonathan. Alright, so what we want is we've got our development token here. I kind of made this earlier. What you can see is it's going to content will be queried from our draft stage, which is what we want. We want to be able to see unpublished content when we're building locally. That'll allow us to see the latest changes that aren't necessarily on production. So we'll go ahead and copy that. Keep going the wrong way with this. Now a .env, drop that in there, save. Alright, so now in theory what should happen is I'm just going to have to rebuild. I'm not used to using terminal inside of VS Code, which is why I don't know the shortcuts. I'm not very good at this. Do I just delete that? Okay. Okay, maybe I can kill this one, delete that one. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now when we rebuild the site, because we've included the source plugin here, what Gatsby is going to do is it's actually going to query our GraphCMS endpoint and build a schema and build nodes based on our GraphCMS project. So what we should be seeing is we should see some types inside of our Gatsby schema relating to this GraphCMS product. So if we go ahead and rebuild in here, and we'll be able to see that in Graphql. Just seen an error there. This is not what I wanted to see. Only absolute URLs are supported. So this means that my GraphCMS endpoint. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, what am I doing wrong here? GraphCMS endpoint. Only absolute URLs are permitted. What am I doing wrong? It's something so obvious. Yeah, you can see the error inside the source plugin there, and it's basically because this is undefined. Oh no. What am I doing wrong? We're just going to do Gatsby clean on the off chance that it's cached is messing with it. I don't think that's the problem, but let's try. This is literally everybody's nightmare when you're streaming. Stuff just breaks. Yeah. This is a disaster. Okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to throw the endpoint and the token in. We're going to ignore .env, as I ignore what I've just said about .env, and just put these in here anyway. This is really bad practice. Please don't do this. But for the sake of this quick demo, we're going to do it anyway. Oh. Alright, should now build. Please build. So Gatsby should now build, and it should query. Oh no way! What is happening? Oh wow! Typo. So I can So it's expecting the endpoint key in the plugin options, and I put endoint. Yeah, that'll do it. So if we just undo that, and now we can use .env, and if we actually spell endpoint correctly, this should fix it. I'm just glad that that was hopefully the issue, and it wasn't something more sinister. So now it should build. All right, there you go. So you can notice there, during the kind of build phase of Gatsby, everything reports, or the reporter logs everything in the console. So we can actually see here the Gatsby GraphQL toolkit that Gatsby built, fetching our types from our GraphCMS schema. So it's now built successfully, and if we go back into Graphql, I'm just going to refresh this. We now have these new types here. So we've got GraphCMS product, and we have GraphCMS asset, which is it's a default model in the GraphCMS schema. Every project gets that. Our product thing here is related to this. So if we just look at this, look at the product type here, you'll notice that we have all the fields that we kind of defined in our schema. So we've got name, which is a string, slug, which is a string, images, which is a reference to an asset. So you'll notice that we've got that that relationship there, and it kind of many values, therefore the array notation there. So yeah, our schema is now inside Gatsby. We've got those nodes built from our GraphCMS project, so now we can actually go ahead and query them. So Gatsby gives you these kind of, it's very particular about how their types are built in the formatting of those. So what you'll get is a singular query like GraphCMS product, where you're required to pass, 2, 3. That'll be null because we don't have that one. But then you also get all GraphCMS product, which doesn't require any arguments, and we've got the nodes here, and then we've got all access to all of our fields there. So there's our two products back from GraphCMS. They're still in draft, but obviously we have a draft token available to us. So we've got those queried. Let's just go ahead and quickly add the, I need to add that. We're going to go ahead and quickly add a query to the page here. So just write this query. So as we said, we need to use the Gatsby types that have been generated for us. So that's all GraphCMS products, and we got nodes, and we want to get the ID. So it's actually important. Remember, this is one thing that I noticed using the toolkit. The ID will actually be the ID field that is generated in the source plugin, so it's actually prefixed with the type, and what happens is the ID field that comes back from the CMS is actually remote ID. So you notice that's got that there. So just be wary of that if you end up using this, that those fields are kind of switched around, and there may be an option in that toolkit. I'll have to have a look to figure that out. So let's just go ahead and get some basic fields here. We'll now have data inside of here. If I remember, yeah, what we should see now, we'll just go back to oh dear. Wow, I'm gonna have to consult the Gatsby docs. My mind has gone blank. What have I done wrong? There's always something going wrong. Export const GraphQL. Yes, it's not a function, is it? You don't need these parentheses. Yep, so you can see there I'm getting a warning, another warning. I'm having a good day really. Cannot query field all GraphCMS products. That's because it's not pluralized type. It's singular, so it's all GraphCMS product, Jonathan. Remember that. Refresh now. If we check our console log, we have our product here. Obviously that's not much use. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a alias there. Actually, just the structure. So now we've got our products here. So we have products.nodes. It's important to remember that now that we're using the Gatsby internal Gatsby schema of the site, we've got to use that nodes thing. So let's remember that. We're just going to do a h1 new product name. I need to give that a key because that's good practice. Currently property nodes of undefined, of course. This is the problem I always have. I think it's because I added that alias and we haven't rerun the query, so it's still looking for that rather than products. Done that again. Let's do this again. Products. So that should be now the key in the data prop. I've run Gatsby clean again. All right, here we go. This time. So once we've got these product names rendering, yay! We're gonna go ahead and add Gatsby image. So this is pretty cool because this is something that's not really possible with the GraphQL source plugin, the Gatsby source GraphQL plugin, because as I said, it's not building those nodes that are required. So yeah, that's something that's pretty exciting about this, that we can now use that inside of GraphCMS, Gatsby project with GraphCMS. So we're going to do yarn add Gatsby image. Oh, how convenient, I already have that command. So we need to update our config here to include these new plugins and transformer. So what we get by using Gatsby image, just pull this up quickly actually. Yeah, so this is basically a way of optimizing images, and it kind of exports a React component that you can use in with Gatsby nodes. So yeah, you get some like nice lazy loading. You can download the remote assets locally, so they're a lot faster to actually kind of render on your page. Yeah, and you can use things like Sharp for kind of some nice kind of loading effects, that kind of thing. So it's a really popular plugin with Gatsby, and it kind of shows off the benefits of using a Gatsby site. So yeah, we've got those plugins there, our plugin and our transformer. So what we need to do is actually update our query to actually go ahead and fetch the image from the product. So we've got an image here in each of these. We're just going to quickly add that. So what's important to remember here is that the images field is only going to return those fields from GraphCMS. So things like the URL of the CDN where it's stored. Yeah, so it's obviously not running. yeah, so that query is going to return things like the ID of the asset from GraphCMS, the CDN URLs where we can actually view that in the browser. But what the source plugin does, what Gatsby GraphQL source GraphCMS is doing, is actually adding another field to the asset type, which is actually a local version of the file, and that is what we're going to use to actually kind of use Gatsby image with that. So we need to add something to our config, and that is download local images, I believe. You wouldn't think I wrote this plugin, but I did. Download local images, true. So when we add that to our config, that is going to tell Gatsby, I actually want to download all of my GraphCMS assets as local assets to my site, so that we can use them with Gatsby image and stuff like that. So this is a pretty cool part. We're gonna have to restart the build process. Yeah, so yeah, restart it. And what we'll get is we'll get a new field on our assets, and it'll be local file, and from there we can use the transformer fields and things like this, so we can actually use these fragments that are provided to us by this transformer that we just installed. So you'll end up with a query that'll look like this right here. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So it's going to be like ID local file child image sharp, and we want fluid. We're gonna say fixed, and we pass an argument there, 500 width, and then as a fragment we can use Gatsby, and I can never remember this off the top of my head. Gatsby image sharp fixed. Gatsby image sharp fixed. All right. So this should now work. So yeah, you can see it's generating our image thumbnails here. So that's actually going to the GraphCMS CDN, downloading a local copy, a local file for each of those assets. So there's only a couple, but that's all we need to get started. So now inside of here, we should now have an actual image. So we can import image from Gatsby image. I'm gonna have to wrap this in a fragment because I haven't put a div around it, and this is fine. And this image component accepts a few props. The one that we need to pass for this to work is the fixed prop, and then we're going to pass it the path of this image that we just queried. So it's fixed, and it'll be product image local file dot child image sharp dot fixed. If this works first time, I'll be amazed. I have a little faith in myself. Not really, probably local file I've undefined. Perhaps I have not. So it's an array, of course. Right, so we're going to have to map over that, although we only have one. So we're going to do we can move that up. We can say image, give that a key. Did query the ID, I'm sure. There we go. Look at that. So you can see we get this kind of loading effect. There is a prop to disable that. I can't remember. It might just be lazy load. Fade in, something like that. Yeah, fade in. All right, so we're going to turn that off because I'm not a big fan of that. Yeah, but now these images are actually, so if we inspect this, yeah, so you can see those images, the source for that image is a local asset. As you can see, it's pointing to the localhost 8000 port there. So we've downloaded the images from the CMS and they built them as local nodes for us to query with Gatsby image, which is a new thing in Gatsby GraphCMS world. That's not previously possible. So that is pretty nice. Okay, so now we have a functioning site. And what we actually want to do now is actually get this building into Gatsby Cloud with Gatsby Preview, so we can make some changes in the CMS, add some stuff, remove some stuff, and see it rebuild in real time. So we're just going to go ahead and commit this. I may be prompted for crypting. Yep, so I'll do that. Approved. All right, so now have our repository here with our site. It's building. Beautiful. But what we want to do is actually add it to Gatsby Cloud. So I'm going to log in. Logging in with GitHub here. As you can see, we have a GraphCMS org. I'm going to reactivate this workspace. So this is my personal workspace. I want to add a new site. Let's add a site. I already have a Gatsby site because we've created it and uploaded it to GitHub. Okay. Yep. So we're going to have to kind of authorize myself here. All right, give a permission to that repository. Man, Apple need to add like some external Touch ID thing because when my MacBook's clamshelled, it sucks. All right, so we're adding the repository now. We want to build it from master. The base directory is correct. We're just going to change that. Gatsby Preview GraphCMS. Next. So now what it's going to do is it's going to create the site inside of Gatsby Cloud and give us some optional integrations. Now, at the moment, there's a ton of CMSs available. GraphCMS is not listed here, but we are working on an actual integration with Gatsby, so you'll be able to do this kind of out the box, setting up with Gatsby Cloud. So yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting. But for now, we're going to have to do this manually. So right here, what you'll notice at the bottom, if we're not using any of the above, we've got a post endpoint here which we can trigger. We can trigger a rebuild for our previews on any content change. So we can use GraphCMS webhooks to do that. So I'm going to head and copy this URL because we'll need that in a second. Skip that step. Okay, so we want to build from master. We also need to add environment variables for the preview. We also need to add build environment variables. So that's perhaps the production ones, and these will be a draft one so we can see live draft changes. So I'm going to dive back into GraphCMS. We're going to go to webhooks here, and we're going to create a new webhook, and we're going to call it Gatsby Preview. We don't need the payload. It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters if you include that when you're using this, but the way that internally it's going to work is it's actually going to requery for the latest data rather than use the payload from the webhook. So it doesn't matter if you include that, but it's preferred not to. We'll just give it the URL here that Gatsby just gave us. So what we're setting up now is the triggers. What changes should trigger an event to rebuild Gatsby Preview? If we don't add anything, it's a wildcard, so we're just going to head and leave that blank because we want all the content models to be rebuilt. We're only interested in the draft stage because, again, this is a preview, so we need to see draft changes, not stuff that's published. And again, any wildcards, so create, update, or delete. And I'm going to go ahead and create that. So now we've got our, now we've got our active webhook. We need to add some environment variables. So we'll go back into our project settings. API access here. We're going to create, well, we can copy this for starters because that's always the same regardless of environment. So let's drop that in there and drop that in there. We've got a production token already. As you can see, I've given it, the queries will come from the publish stage. That's awesome. So we're going to head copy that and drop that in there for our builds. Again, builds, so Gatsby offers a build service as well. So they'll build your Gatsby site using the incremental build stuff, which we'll look at some point in the future. And then you could actually kind of optionally deploy it elsewhere with CDNs like Netlify or Vercel. So that's pretty cool. It's also nice is that they picked up these environment variables from our config, which is a pretty nice touch. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new token. I'm going to call it Gatsby Preview, very verbose. And we want content from stage draft. And we're just going to create that. We can copy that there. Put that back here. Okay, we've got all our environment variables. That's all we need. I'm going to click create site. Now Gatsby is going to build an initial version of that, of our master branch, which is what we've just built. So we should, in a few minutes, have a published built version of this. All right, so we go back into here. Then what you'll notice is just poking around is they also have deploy previews for branches, for PRs and things like that, which is pretty nice. And they also have over here the preview branches. And I've got an error. Do I have an error? It's still going. Alright, so we just got to wait. Oh, failed. God damn it. And that is not helpful. Oh, wow. Okay. So we're having issues installing. That's annoying because this worked just the other day with the same install process. I got. This looks wrong. Alright, so git package. Let me just check this out. Because basically what it does is we can kind of install from a branch. So if we go to Gatsby source GraphCMS, hopefully we can fix this. So what we need to do is we actually need from this next branch here. Just go ahead and copy that. Alright, I think I might have done something wrong. So just copy that. Go back here. Let's see what happens here. Hopefully, this path doesn't look right. Invalid package version undefined. Why has this been a pain? No subfolder. Oh, that's why. Yeah, it's a subfolder, so it's a Yarn workspace mono repo. So the actual package doesn't live at the root directory; it lives in its child directory, of course. Missing the obvious things. Okay, copy that. I feel like it looks the same, which is not. Alright, no diff. Oh man. What is happening here? I don't know. This is not good. Where are we at? How can I trigger a rebuild? Let's try this again. Come on, Gatsby Cloud, please. So we're actually in the process of publishing the new version of the source plugin, but yeah. So if this doesn't work, what I can do is I can actually simulate Gatsby Cloud locally using webhooks and ngrok. It's not as elegant or as nice, but at least it'll work. I'm not sure. Again, I had this working earlier this week. I'm not sure what's happening here. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's tripping up every time. This is disappointing. I'm just going to try and actually remove this. And if it doesn't work, then ngrok to the rescue. One last try. Okay, so it's removed. So now if I copy that, paste back in. Yeah, there's no diff. There's no diff. Oh, I'm stuck. Yeah. All right. Let's do this with ngrok. Let me just try and think. Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up with ngrok. So we'll create another. No, I don't need that. What I need is an ngrok port to here. And Gatsby, what they actually have is there's an experimental, and I'm never going to remember this. This is going to be the fall down. They have an experimental environment variable you can pass in with Gatsby Dev that exposes a refresh, I believe, endpoint which you can hit with webhooks, which does the rebuilds locally. So that's what we're going to try and use if I can remember this. Perhaps. Let me just see what we've got here. Just check this private org. Because I had this working earlier this week. Yeah, you see that worked earlier. Oh, I know. It's in the demo repo on here. There you go. Yes. So we need to add this flag. We add this flag to dev, and what we get is you get a refresh endpoint that we can hit with our webhooks. So it's not as elegant as Gatsby Cloud, and I'm a bit disappointed that I can't show that today. But at least you'll see the refresh happening. All right, so we've added that. We've got our ngrok. Got our ngrok URL here. So I'm going to add a new webhook, ngrok. Needs to be HTTPS. We need that to be refresh. Include the payload. We only want draft, just as before. Alright, so now when we make some changes in the CMS, the webhook, those events will fire to that webhook, which we can use, Gatsby will rebuild the site. So we do yarn dev. You can see it's building with the flag there, the Gatsby refresh endpoint flag. So what will happen now? Oh, here comes my dog. Hey buddy, he's just been out for a walk. Good boy. Alright, so yes, we've got the refresh endpoint. We've got our ngrok tunnel open. So let's go ahead and make some changes in the site. So we've got, I'm going to close some tabs here. So that's still building locally, which is a relief. If I go over here, I'm just going to kind of get these side by side. So we can actually preview this and show that it's actually happening. Alright. So this is happening here. We're in our snapback here. Let's go ahead and just make a quick change. We're not actually using the description thing, so I'm going to add another key on just to purely demonstrate this. Yes, you'll notice there we triggered a rebuild, and go back. Snapback has another key. So let's kind of create a new product. So we're getting some new stock, and I'm going to kind of add an image. So what have we got here? Let's upload an image from. Let's upload an image. What have we got? Let's have this t-shirt, this long sleeve t-shirt. Nice. Long sleeve tee. Long sleeve tee. Sweet. Okay, so we need to give it a price because that's required. Yeah, so what should happen is it should appear at the bottom. So I'm just going to save that. Gatsby's rebuilding as we speak, and there you go. Almost instantaneous. The asset, I'm not sure what's happening there, but yeah, it's reloaded in now there. So yeah, so I'm a bit disappointed I couldn't use Gatsby Cloud, but it definitely worked earlier in the week. There's something about that package, the way that we're installing the dependency, the GraphCMS source plugin dependency, that it didn't like. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. And hopefully once we get that published properly to the NPM registry, then that'll be, it'll work fine. I'm confident of that. So hopefully we'll get that resolved early next week, and we'll actually be able to kind of showcase it in Gatsby Cloud fully. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, you can get at me on Twitter. It's at Yonoj, that's YNNOJ. Thanks for watching, and yeah, this hasn't been my first live stream solo, so been a bit nervy. But yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some more. So yeah, thanks for watching. Take it easy.